Good evening, everybody. Today is Thursday, August 11th, and we have a really special treat. We've got Molly and Carl back with us, and they're going to be talking about a coil that I don't know how to properly pronounce. I think it's Lakhovski, but they will tell you way more about it. It's one of the healing technologies that they have, and they've been using, and it looks super cool. But more importantly, it's been helping a lot of people around the world. So great to have you guys back on the show, and I will turn back over to you guys to get this call started.
All right, thanks, Emily. Do you want me to switch to presentation?
Sure, yeah.
Let's see. Sorry, just want to get in presentation mode here. All right, you see presentation mode there?
Not yet, but the slides are up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Slides are up. Okay. So what we're going to be talking about tonight is what's called the Lakhovski healing coils, and it's something that we came across a couple of years ago. Oh, about 2 years ago, year and a half, 2 years ago.
It was actually from, Whiplash posted about the tachyon chambers a year and a half ago, and we went up to the one in Virginia, and the second time we went, he had these in his lobby. So that's how we were introduced to him. So it's all thanks to Whip.
Yeah, so we were doing the tachyon chambers, and in between times, he told us to go ahead and sit in these coils for a while. And I noticed some big time effects from these coils. So we started looking more into it, and we ended up buying a set for ourselves. So we'll go through this. We'll go through a few slides here to go through the technology and the history and everything. And then after that, we'll show you ours here and show you how it actually works, because it's actually really cool. So the current situation for everybody's exhausted, and everybody has chronic fatigue and everything, and there's so many products on the market to give everybody energy, and everybody's hopped up on coffee trying to get energy because everybody's just feeling so tired. And one of the things that we're going to go over in the presentation is that each of your cells, like every cell of your body, is a little battery. And this is what not only Tesla but Dr. Lakhovski, this is one of the things that he theorized, was that each one of your cells is like a little battery. And once the voltage of your battery gets down to a certain point, you start diminishing. And at some point, you start getting to the disease state. So what we're going to do with these coils is we're going to fix that. So if you go to Lakhovski.com, and that's how you spell it right there. If you go to Lakhovski.com, it has a really good breakdown of what Lakhovski's research was, what happened, and it has a lot of information on there. And at the bottom of the page, it takes you to a place in New Zealand where you can buy these, and that's where actually we bought ours. But there's a ton of information on there, and it's a great read, and it has a link to a book that Lakhovski published that's available for free there. You can just get the PDF there. So what he designed was what he called the multi-wave oscillator, or what he called the MWO. And reading through the website, what the person who wrote this website was saying is that the MWO is part Tesla coil and part Earth generator, and it's pure geneless. We'll talk more about that as we go along. But Lakhovski's device was used in this country until 1942, and in Europe for another 15 years. It was ordered removed from U.S. hospitals that were using it shortly after Lakhovski died in 1942. He was hit by a car. Coincidence? You be the judge. We'll talk more about that, but it's pretty wild, the history and how we almost lost it. So the original multi-wave oscillator was designed by the French engineer Georges Lakhovski, and I may be pronouncing that wrong, from the 1920s to the 1940s. So when he started using these in hospitals across Europe and then in the United States, he had a crazy success rate with cancers and all kinds of other things. And he had a 98% success rate with fatal cancers. And today we celebrate 50% 5-year survival rate. So if you don't die within 5 years of cancer, we're considering that a win instead of actually curing it. We haven't cured anything in this country for I don't know how long, because there's so much money in just keeping you sick and just mitigating your symptoms. But we'll talk about that more later. So what?
Go ahead. The slides aren't moving with you.
The slide. Hang on, just give it a second.
Oh, you're right, you're not.
They were. It may just take a little bit. Have we gone through any slides, or are we still on the first slide, Emily?
On the first one.
What a waste of time. All right. Maybe slideshow mode. Just
Can you
doesn't
see it
work
now?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, just keep it here. Just keep it here and here.
Good enough.
Okay, so you can see it right now, right, Emily?
Yep. Thanks, guys.
Okay, so Dr. Lakhovski was the first to predict the existence of the double helix that we know as DNA. So he was a very smart person. Okay, and in regards to this, he postulated that all living cells, whether it's plant, people, bacteria, or parasites, they possess attributes that are normally associated with oscillating electrical circuits. Now, and this is all coming from that article on that Lakhovski.com page. But from here, he's talking about how all your cells possess attributes that are normally associated with electric circuits. And if you read through this, he starts going through electrical engineering jargon, which I get. I mean, that's my background. But then he starts talking about resonance. And he said this effect is known as resonance. And the easiest way to compare it is with a child swinging or on a playground swing. So resonance is a concept known in physics and engineering where if you do something at a certain frequency, it can multiply itself. About a child swinging on a swing, and if you've ever pushed your kid while on a playground swing, you know that if you push at just the right frequency, that you can push very little and keep the kid swinging at the same height. And that's because you're pushing at the resonant frequency. The same thing with bridges. Bridges are built to basically tamp down the resonant frequency, because if bridges are built wrong and wind starts blowing and it starts hitting the bridge at a certain frequency, if the wind constantly hits at this certain frequency, then it can completely rattle the bridge apart. And if you've ever seen videos of that online, you can Google bridge resonance and see these bridges just flying apart. It's because the wind is hitting the bridge at a certain frequency, and it multiplies itself just by doing the same thing at that same frequency. So that's the concept of resonance, is just you pick a certain frequency that is the perfect frequency for whatever it is that you're talking about, and that frequency has magic effects on it, and it can amplify things in a huge way. So that's resonance. So what Lakhovski built was his multi-wave oscillator. He designed it around 1920 and was working out through the 40s. But he believed that every cell in the body has its own rate of internal vibration. And by vibration, you can think of an atom. And an atom is made up of a proton and a neutron in its nucleus, and then electrons flying around the nucleus at incredible speeds. And every time the electron circles around the nucleus, that makes one pass. And if it does it a bunch of times per second, an incredible amount per second, that's the frequency that it's making those circles around the nucleus. And that electron moving around creates vibration. So that's when, there's a lot of talk. If you read a bunch of books or whatever, a lot of people are talking about everything is vibration. That's what they're talking about. They're talking about the speed that an electron will fly around the nucleus of an atom. So he believed that every cell has its own rate of internal vibration, and that disease is a battle of vibrations between the cells of between the healthy cells and the cells of viruses and bacteria. And it's constant battle between the vibrations of both of those cells. And if the pathogenic organisms won this vibrational contest, the cell would become weakened energetically and much more susceptible to disease.
So cells are happy at one vibration, and bacteria or whatever comes in and messes up that vibration, and then we have disease.
Well, actually, what it is disease cells will vibrate at a certain frequency, and healthy cells vibrate at a different frequency, and so you can use those different. Yeah, right. And one of them is going to win. So the differentiation of those frequencies is what's kind of key to what he's doing here. So he says the way to counter this vibrational attack was to introduce a broad spectrum of radio frequencies. And what that means is basically a bunch of different radio frequencies into the system. And you do that by sitting in between these two coils. On the right-hand side, there's the picture there. That's one of the coils. And when you buy a set, you buy 2 of these coils. You set them up, with some space in between them, and you sit in between them. But what he's saying is you introduce a bunch of radio frequencies into the system, and then each cell in your body, healthy cells and not healthy cells, each cell would pick out exactly the right frequency needed to reinforce its own internal vibration, and the healthy cell would be more resistant to vibrational attacks from virus and bacteria. So basically these coils will put out a whole bunch of EMFs, a whole bunch of radio frequencies that are what your body needs, that are the proper frequencies that the healthy cells in your body needs. And your healthy cells will pick up on these frequencies and will all of a sudden start healing themselves and getting stronger. And at the end, they'll be able to overtake any disease cells and basically kill them. So when you look at this ring, this whole thing is an antenna, and these rings are close to 3 foot across at the widest radius there. Each ring radiates at a different wavelength, at a different frequency. The different diameter rings, they emit a different frequency. But when you turn them on, each ring, the diameters produce different frequencies, and they all interact with each other. And what you get is the natural frequency of the earth. So when we go out and we walk around in the woods, like everybody knows that if you go for a walk in the woods, or if you spend considerable time in nature, you come out of there and you feel great. And one of the reasons being that the earth is supposed to, the earth that we're supposed to be living in is supposed to be set up to have a certain magnetic field that we are constantly living in. And the magnetic field that we're supposed to be living in, the clouds and the earth, between those two things, there's supposed to be a magnetic field in between them. And what happens if you see lightning, that is the discharge of that magnetic field and the electric field coming from the clouds to the earth. So it's basically like shorting a wire. And so there's this magnetic field happening between the clouds and the earth. And we are grounded, and this field that we're supposed to be living in is the natural field that our healthy cells will react to and grow stronger. That's where we're supposed to, that's what we're supposed to be living in. And if we were living in it, we'd feel great basically all the time. That's why when you go out in the woods, you feel, after a while you feel great. But what we live in now is not that. We're surrounded by Wi-Fi, we're surrounded by cell phones, we're surrounded by all these power lines and whatnot. And the more that, us personally, the more that we've gotten rid of wireless stuff in our house. I mean, we had to get rid of Wi-Fi for a while because of our son was, reacting eczema-wise to Wi-Fi. And when we got rid of it, we noticed how calm our house was. You remember that?
Yeah, it was a feeling of stress disappeared, and it was like, holy crap, stress is artificial. It's Wi-Fi.
Yeah, we had, our son had eczema really bad, so we were looking at everything that could possibly be affecting it, and we realized that not only did we have Wi-Fi covering our house, but we also had these baby monitors that is Wi-Fi direct, which is even stronger than Wi-Fi, and that was right next to his crib. So we shut all that off, and not only did it help as far as eczema goes, but after about 5 or 6 hours of turning all the Wi-Fi off and getting rid of all that wireless stuff, Molly and I were sitting around the house, and we were like, wow, the house just feels really calm.
Yeah.
It was really kind of crazy to feel, but everything was really calming. So the more we go along, the more we realize that all this wireless stuff, whether it's Bluetooth or Wi-Fi or whatever, all this stuff, just so much of it around us is a lot worse for us than what they're telling us. So this world that we kind of created out of convenience is not very good for us, and that's why we're kind of deteriorating at a accelerated pace. So if you get one of these, that can turn it around, because these things are really amazing. I can't go more than a few days without hopping into one of these things. So there was a guy named Otto Warburg who won a Nobel Prize, And he said that healthy cells have a voltage of 70 to 90 millivolts. So, in your house, if you take a voltmeter and you plug it into the plugs in your outlets in your house, that's 120 volts. And a millivolt is 1,000th of 1 volt. Okay, so he's saying that every healthy cell has voltages of 70 to 90 millivolts. So it's very small, but it's very powerful when you're talking about the cells in your body. It says, due to the constant stresses of modern life and a toxic environment, cell voltage tends to drop as we age or as we get sick. So you see these diagrams over here, we're going to talk more about them, but the more the voltage deteriorates, the worse things get for our bodies. We start getting tired first. That's the second state in the yellow. We start getting tired, we start getting unfocused and all that stuff. And then we start getting into the disease state as we get older. Okay, so that's what we're trying to fix, because we're all going through this, pretty rapid deterioration that seems to be getting even more rapid as the generations go on. So as the voltage drops in each cell, the cell is unable to maintain a healthy environment. So if the electrical charge of a cell drops to 50, the person starts getting chronic fatigue and gets sick a lot. If the voltage drops to 15, it can become cancerous. Okay, so that's what these people who are very, very smart we're saying that is one of the main causes of disease. And the more we go along and we go through tachyon chambers and we go through homeopathy, which is what Molly does a lot, and it really seems like our world is approaching medicine like it's some chemistry project. If we're sick, it's because we're lacking some chemical. So here's a chemical you can take to fix it. But the more we go along and we see all this technology that's out there, medicine really needs to be based in physics, not in chemistry. Yeah, it's not a chemical that we're missing. Our bodies are electrical systems.
No, that's because you're giving it the nourishment. You still need vitamins, minerals.
Yeah, right. You can't eat like crap.
Yeah, if you're doing the basic things, so anything you need to fix, you don't.
Yep. So frequency. Our bodies are electrical systems, and whenever you have electric current running through, a wire or anything, you generate magnetic fields. That's basically how motors work and how generators and transformers work. That's, everyday physics. But for some reason, we don't apply that to our body, even though we know our bodies are huge electrical systems. So we are generating magnetic fields all the time, and for some reason, medicine just completely ignores that. And when you start getting into these energy medicines and these things that start looking at frequencies and magnetic fields as methods of healing, you're like, wow, this makes a whole lot of sense, and it makes a whole lot more sense than I'm deficient in Prozac. So anyways, let's go on, because I can talk myself into the closet. The fastest way to raise cell voltages is from what Dr. Lakhovski was saying, is by going into this multi-wave oscillator. He discovered that healthy cells acted like little batteries and found out how to recharge them and how to raise their voltages. So he published the English version of a book called The Secret of Life at the start of World War II. This is when he was in France. His work went very unnoticed and little reviewed, but Lakhovski's reputation for obtaining dramatic results with his multi-wave oscillator gained big attention. And in 1941, he made his way to New York, escaping Nazi occupation of France. And this is coming from that Lakhovski.com. I'm pulling a lot of the stuff from that page because that was actually a very, very good page to read. It's kind of long, but it's very good information. When he got to the US, a film made by an enterprising beautician featured several case histories of treatment with a multi-wave oscillator that proved to be both convincing and interesting. And Lakhovski also was approached by several hospitals in New York, hoping to test his apparatus experimentally. Remarkable results were obtained from a 7-week clinical trial performed at a major New York City hospital, and that of a prominent Brooklyn urologist in the summer of 1941. Later editions of The Secret of Life detailed many of these cases. Okay, so he started doing this in Europe, and it was very successful. Then he came over here and started doing it, and it caught the attention of a New York City hospital. Okay, so that's how this history of it is very interesting, and it's interesting how it was almost lost. So that's why I'm going through this. When he got to New York, what seemed like a promising development in the use of the multi-wave oscillator quickly faded after Lakhovski unexpectedly died in New York in 1942 at the age of 73. A car struck and killed him in a most suspicious manner. Now, I don't know what suspicious manner that was because this was 1942 and there's not too much record of it. But his equipment was removed from the hospital, and patients were told that the therapy was just no longer available all of a sudden.
No longer available.
No longer available. Except for this brief trial in New York, Lakhovski's work remained completely unknown to the American public. So what happened, picturing yourself back in the 1920s and what was happening, that was the heyday of, the Rockefellers. That was when they were coming to power. And we all know that the Rockefellers in the 1920s, that was when the Rockefellers started pumping major money into the American Medical Association because they were trying to sell, the Rockefellers at that time were big in oil. And what they were trying to do at the time was trying to figure out all these different ways to sell their petroleum products, and it included medicine. So what they did was they went, and this is in all kind. If you've ever seen the Truth About Cancer docuseries, right? It was in there. Truth About, I forget if it was the Truth About Vaccines or the Truth About Cancer. May have been both, but they were talking about this in the 1920s. The Rockefellers started approaching the American Medical Association and the medical education institutions, and they started pumping them full of money. And the payback for them giving them all that money was for the medical associations to start promoting these chemical medicines, so that they can sell their petroleum products.
And telling their patients that if they saw a homeopath, somebody doing some weird energy work, an acupuncturist, they would not be allowed back to their AMA doctor. So
Yeah,
they scared people into only using pharmaceutical medicine.
yeah. Back before the 1920s, there were, what we call allopathic doctors, which is what we know as a doctor today, a doctor who will prescribe, medications and stuff like that. But there were equal numbers of chiropractors and herbalists and homeopaths all across the country. There was lots of different types of doctors back then, and they were all accepted as equals. Mm-hmm. Well, then all of a sudden the Rockefellers come and they start pumping money into the AMA, and that was when they started going after all the different disciplines of medicine and attacking them, and they started calling them quackery. And they got rid of all of them except for basically chiropractors. The chiropractors were the only ones that really put up a fight. But even at that, chiropractors have been basically dismissed as elected doctor, and they've been pretty much in the public eye, they are backcrackers. They're not medical doctors. They don't fix chronic diseases when they go through just about the same medical training as doctors.
Actually, chiropractors, I forgot who the first one was. I think it was Dr. Parker. Might have been the first one to start a college for chiropractics. And if he's one that I'm thinking of, he was actually all of them were jailed for practicing medicine, but he was the only one that fought back. So every time he was jailed, his clients would go and bail him out over and over and over again.
Yeah. Yep. It was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
The only ones with guts, the homeopaths, the acupuncturists, they didn't fight, and nobody knows that those exist anymore. You look up homeopathy, and all you get is it's quackery now, and nobody even knows what a homeopath is.
Yep.
So at least somebody fought.
So all that was going on back in the 1920s when Rockefeller wanted to push his chemical medicines, and at the same time, this guy, Dr. Lakhovski, is having great success in New York, and especially New York of all places. That's where he started doing these projects and having great success, and all of a sudden he gets hit by a car. At the same time that the Rockefellers are going after the American Medical Association. So it's not too far of a stretch that this guy was taken out. So even after spectacular successes at the New York cases, they were quickly forgotten, an unlikely lapse of memory in the natural scheme of things. It seemed that hidden hands were at work when it came to obliterating the memory of Lakhovski's multi-wave oscillator in America. Fortunately, a small but growing group of experimenters and researchers is helping to revive this honest device. Thousands of people have been helped quietly and without fanfare due to the monopoly the doctors enjoy on being able to make medical claims. So several people now offer multi-wave oscillators. Like I said, we got ours from New Zealand, but there are people that in the U.S. that make them. They're different prices and all that stuff, but the one that we got was from New Zealand. The person writing this article says, my own use of the multi-wave oscillator has demonstrated miraculous results. I've seen it completely defeat arthritis, gout, cancer, diabetes, nerve damage, and other maladies. The multi-wave oscillator helps tune up the body so that it heals like it was young and vibrant again. And my own observations are in complete agreement with Lakhovski's claims and research results. So that's what these people see. And when we got this, what we saw was pretty amazing.